And here at Dayton today on the 29th of August, 2020. And this is the Memphis Belle exhibit. Some of the original crew members' family, the widow of Bob Morgan, the wife, and the son of the pilot were here the day that they opened this exhibit. Just kind of do a little mini vignette here of the what you see here is the uniform of one of the crew members. These artifacts that you see, the uniform pieces, are all from the families of those crew members. So I'm just doing like a mini tour as we go through this exhibit to show you the B-17. She was an F model. This tells about her 25th mission. As we come around, you'll see this is what life looked like at 25,000 feet in an unpressurized aircraft. Their uniforms were actually electrically heated and plugged into the aircraft electrical system to stay warm so they didn't freeze to death. The major fighters that they faced were the Focke-Wulf 190, Messerschmitt Bf 109, the Messerschmitt Bf 110. We'll come around here. What you see above us is the tail gun position of the Belle. This is the actual Memphis Belle. She was not the first aircraft to complete 25 missions, but the first aircraft to complete 25 missions. The name they felt was a little racy, so they chose the Belle to be the representative of the first aircraft to complete those missions. These are some flak helmets that the bomber crews wore, and flak vests. Flak was caused by exploding shells, anti-aircraft guns. The fuses were set to a preset altitude, and when they reached that altitude, the shell exploded, and a small piece of shrapnel went into the aircraft, which was aluminum, so it was fairly thin-skinned. And it would injure the crew or damage the aircraft. I'm going to back up here. This is a beautiful stained glass window that was created for this exhibit. Just absolutely gorgeous. Awful lot of history over here, and this is a free museum, so if you have the time and the inclination, I highly recommend that you come over. It is well worth it, and you really can't do it justice in one day. But the Belle, of course, she had the Women's Air Corps, the Women's Army Corps. This was a Cheyenne-type tail turret. In the movie Memphis Belle, Harry Connick Jr. actually played the tail gunner part. There were two waist gunner positions, a right and a left, or a ported starboard, as well as the belly turret, which is a ball turret. That was the smallest member of the crew because you had to be able to get in that turret and fit, and basically your knees were up by your head and you shot down between your feet. We're going to come in closer so you can get a little better image of that turret. This was the most dangerous position on the aircraft because if you had to crash land with gear up, if you were stuck in that turret, you were a dead man. Because unlike on the B-24, on the 17, the turret did not retract up into the belly. On the Liberator, the turret actually retracted up into the belly. What you see here is the Sperry top turret, which was operated by the, actually I believe it was the flight engineer or the radioman. And that turret had a 360-degree field of fire, had twin Browning 50 calibers. This shows you some of the gun positions in the B-17. The nose gunner, the tail gunner. These were models of aircraft that were used. These were models of aircraft that were used for training gunners to identify whether it was a friendly or a foe aircraft. As you see, they actually used. Who remembers the Viewmaster? They used the Viewmaster as a recognition tool to train the gunners. It's an interesting little fact. I actually have one of the original Viewmasters in the original box. This shows some of the IFF models, showing some of the ways that they might attack a B-17 in combat. As you can see, there was a lot of sweeping, looping attacks come up from behind. The 17s flew what was called a box formation, where you had planes above, below, to the right and to the left, and fore and aft, and their fields of fire actually converged so that they could protect each other during an attack. Here we're looking up into the bomb bay of the Belle. This is where all of your ordnance was carried for the bombing missions. You can see the sliding racks. The bombs would be stacked and they would just fall down off of those racks. The Norden bomb sight was developed and used in the B-17. It was top secret, and one of the crews, if the plane was shot down and crash landed, their mission was to destroy that bomb sight so it did not fall into enemy hands. For its day, it was the most advanced and accurate bomb sight in the world. Because when you're dropping bombs from that altitude, you have to allow for the forward motion of the aircraft, the wind conditions at your altitude as well as at the surface, just all kinds of factors. During the bombing run, the pilot put the plane into straight and level flight, and actual directional control of the aircraft went to the bombardier. You heard me mention earlier the word flak. The German 88 was a deadly accurate flak cannon, and actually it was later adapted by the Germans and put on their Panzers as a tank gun. And it destroyed thousands of Allied tanks because it was so powerful that our armor on the M4 Shermans couldn't stand up to it. On D-Day, we were supported by bomber attacks over, and a lot of it was diversionary to make them think that we were attacking somewhere that we weren't. This is the Bf-109 made by Messerschmitt. It was one of the two most common German fighters used by the Nazi, the Luftwaffe, in its attacks on Allied bomber formations. The Bf-109, BF stood for bomber fighter. Hitler couldn't decide whether to make a plane a bomber or a fighter, and that was one of the downfalls of the Luftwaffe, was Hitler's indecisiveness. The second aircraft that was most commonly used was the Focke-Wulf FW-190.